Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a former counterintelligence agent retreats to the mountains for peace, he finds himself in a silent war with the most unlikely enemy, the local HOA. What begins as a quiet life soon spirals into forged documents, surveillance, and a battle for freedom on his own land. They say the best part of leaving the government is becoming invisible. I believed that. Hell, I built my entire post-service life around that idea. After 15 years working counterintelligence under the Department of Homeland Security, I didn't just crave privacy, I required it. Not the kind where you move into some gated community and wave at your neighbors across chemically perfected lawns. I wanted real silence, isolation. I wanted to step out on my porch and hear nothing but wind through pine and the crunch of elk hooves in the underbrush. That's why I bought the property up in the Colorado mountains, a solid mile outside the HOA managed haven of Aspen Crest. They called it a model mountain community. I called it a prison with Christmas lights. Their bylaws were thicker than the federal wiretap manual and twice as fascist. But my land, my home, it was grandfathered out. Separate lot. No HOA jurisdiction, not a single clause. I spent 6 months researching that before I even stepped onto the soil. I had topographic maps, title history, boundary surveys. Hell, I even tracked down the original subdivision maps in the county archives to confirm I wouldn't wake up one day to a committee telling me to repaint my mailbox beige. The cabin wasn't much when I got it. Cedar boards worn gray with time, a roof that sounded like a drumline every time it rained, and more spiders than I cared to count. But it was mine. I reinforced the perimeter fence, wired up a custom security grid, and redid the interior by hand. No contractors, no inspectors, just me, a crowbar, and a lot of bourbon-fueled weekends. The first few months were everything I wanted. No meetings, no neighbors, no HOA newsletters threatening fines for non-compliant shrub shape. Just stars, snow, and peace. Until the letter showed up. It came in a glossy envelope. Heavy stock, no postage, just the HOA logo embossed in gold like they were the Vatican. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside, an invitation to join Aspen Crest HOA. Invitation my ass. The tone was pure passive-aggressive venom disguised in serif font. We welcome the opportunity to include your property in our shared vision of aesthetic harmony and collective responsibility. It reeked of forced smiles and suburban tyranny. I tossed it straight into the wood stove. A week later, another envelope, bigger. This one included a full integration proposal, 15 pages of mandatory upgrades, including repainting my cabin to match HOA pallet regulations, earth tones only, installing matching shutters, removing my satellite dish, apparently visual, pollution, and, my personal favorite, replacing my perimeter fence with HOA-approved pickets. They wanted me to swap solid wood and electric deterrents for something a golden retriever could hop over. I didn't toss this one. I scanned every page, passed it to my lawyer, and sent back a formal response. Certified mail. No ambiguity. I am not, and have never been, a member of the Aspen Crest Homeowners Association. My property lies outside the recorded jurisdiction of your governance, as confirmed by both county land records and legal precedent. Any further attempts to enforce HOA guidelines on my private land will be treated as harassment. Do not contact me again. Do not step onto my land. You are not welcome. I made sure to CC the county assessor's office and attach my property boundary maps for good measure. After that, silence. But not peace. 2 days later, I noticed a brand new camera had been mounted on a power pole near the road, pointed directly at my gate, the kind you don't buy at Home Depot. I checked the feed from my perimeter system. Sure enough, a dark SUV was parked off the shoulder every afternoon like clockwork. Engine running, same tinted windows, different plates each time. I didn't panic. I'd seen worse surveillance setups when I was pulling intel on cartel compounds. I just expanded my motion sensor range and rotated frequencies on my scrambler. Still, it pissed me off. Then came the casual encounters. Dog walkers who didn't own dogs. Joggers without sweat. Kids cutting through, even though there was no path to cut to. They'd drift close to the property line, sometimes step over, pretending not to see the clearly posted private property signs, always with phones out, always recording. I started logging every incident, plate numbers, faces, timestamps. I wasn't about to let this turn into some HOA crusade against non-compliant architecture. I'd lived through federal-level bullshit. These people were amateurs, but that didn't make them less dangerous, just more entitled. Still, I kept it cold, quiet, professional, until one early morning, one freezing, miserable Colorado morning, they crossed the line completely. But that's another chapter. It was 5:30 in the damn morning when the doorbell rang. Not the kind of time normal people visit. Not even the kind of time you expect someone lost, desperate, or bleeding to show up. This was the kind of hour reserved for raccoons, drunk exes, and apparently the HOA. The bell didn't just ring, it hammered. Long, insistent buzzes, one after another, like someone wanted to break my door with pure determination. I rolled out of bed still half asleep, stepped into my boots, grabbed the Glock from the bedside safe, and checked the security feed from my phone. 2 people stood on my porch. They wore navy blue jackets with the Aspen Crest HOA logo stitched over the chest like they were from some federal agency. One held a clipboard. The other had a shoulder-mounted camera pointed directly at my door. Both were middle-aged, stone-faced, and looked like they'd just been pulled from a casting call for unpaid HOA Gestapo. I opened the door, but kept the screen locked. "You're trespassing," I said flatly, voice like gravel. "And you've got 10 seconds to explain before you're on police record for it." Clipboard guy stepped forward. "Sir, we're here to conduct a compliance inspection on behalf of the Aspen Crest Homeowners Association." I blinked at him. "You're on my property," I said, "which is not under your jurisdiction, and you're not getting in." Camera guy didn't even flinch. He zoomed in, filming through the screen. Clipboard tried the bureaucratic tone. "Under subsection 5.2 of the Community Integration Act, any abutting property—" "Stop!" I snapped. "There is no such act. This isn't a movie. You're not agents. You have no authority here." Then came the kicker. Without a word, camera guy lowered his rig, pulled out a smartphone, and dialed. I watched as he turned away and calmly said, "Yes, 911. I'm with the Aspen Crest HOA. We're trying to conduct a lawful inspection, and the resident is refusing entry. We believe he may be hostile, possibly armed." I stared at him, incredulous. He glanced back at me with a smirk, like he'd just played his winning hand. I closed the door in his face and went full operational mode. Boots laced, body cam on. I activated every camera on my property, synced live feeds to the cloud, and started a separate audio recorder clipped to my collar. By the time I stepped outside, they were still on the porch, camera guy pretending to look afraid, as if I'd lunged out with a machete instead of a cease and desist letter. I stood calmly on my porch, both hands visible. "Police are coming, right?" I said. "Good, I'll wait with you. I've got coffee brewing." They didn't answer. 10 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived. Lights off, slow approach, hands on belts. One of them, Deputy Lasky, I recognized from town. Good guy, level-headed. The other was new. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone friendly. "I'm Mark Venton. This is my land." These 2 showed up without invitation or warrant and claimed they had the right to enter. The HOA clowns immediately started talking over me, rapid-fire complaints about urgent compliance and community integrity. Lasky cut them off. "Slow down. Do you have a warrant?" Clipboard guy froze. "Well, no, but do you have any legal jurisdiction over this address?" Camera guy jumped in. "This property falls under HOA expansion guidelines adopted last year. We sent notice." "No," I said, stepping forward. "You sent unsolicited offers. I refused. You have no authority here. The property is outside HOA lines, as confirmed by County Land Office and the original plat." Lasky turned to me. "Do you have documentation?" "Better," I said. I pulled out my phone, opened the property map, and showed the GPS-linked boundary overlay. "Everything you need. This land was specifically excluded when the Aspen Crest subdivision was created. I can send the original documentation if you like." New deputy nodded. "Yeah, let's get that. We'll file a report either way." Lasky turned back to the HOA reps. "You're trespassing. There's no warrant. You called us under false pretenses. You're lucky he didn't press charges." Clipboard started to argue again, but Lasky shut it down with a look I knew well, the kind that said, "One more word and you'll be explaining this in cuffs." Camera guy took a step back. "We'll be filing a formal claim with the HOA legal team," he hissed. "You'll be hearing from us." I smiled coldly. "Tell Karen Drake I said hi." That made them pause. They turned and left without another word. Once they were gone, I invited the deputies in for a quick walk-around. I showed them the camera system, the footage, the mail from the HOA, and the recorded 911 call that falsely implied I was a threat. Lasky whistled low when he saw it. "This is going to bite them in the ass," he said. "I'm counting on it." The officers left shortly after, and I went back inside, the adrenaline starting to settle. I poured myself that coffee. It was lukewarm now, but I didn't care. I stood by the window, watching the sun burn the frost off the pine needles, and thought, they're getting bold, sloppy, desperate, which means they were hiding something. Time to start digging. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I spent most of it at my desk with the lights off, watching the external feeds from the perimeter cams. I wasn't paranoid. I just knew exactly how people like Karen Drake operated. She didn't take no for an answer, and she sure as hell didn't take kindly to being made to look like an idiot on her own turf, especially not in front of cops. By the time the first light crept over the ridge, I had a plan. First step, pull every record I could get my hands on, and I knew exactly where to start. At 9 o'clock sharp, I called my lawyer, Dale. Old school guy. Ex-military, now specializing in property rights and real estate fraud. The exact type of bastard you want in your corner when you're dealing with bureaucratic sociopaths in cardigan sweaters. I laid out everything that happened the morning before. The false 911 call, the trespassing, the inspection. Dale didn't even blink. "I want a full title check and property history pulled from the county clerk's office," I told him. "And see if anything's been added to the land record recently." Anything. You think they doctored the documents? I think Karen's desperate, and desperate people forge things. Dale said he'd call back. He didn't take long. By 2 o'clock, he sent over a scanned copy of a new filing attached to my parcel record, logged just 5 days ago, and it was a goddamn bombshell. According to this brand new record, I had voluntarily joined the Aspen Crest Homeowners Association by signing a document titled Community Alignment Agreement. Problem was, I'd never seen that document in my life. I zoomed in on the signature at the bottom. Mine, supposedly. It wasn't even a good fake. The loops were off, the slant too clean, like someone had traced it from a check and cleaned it up with a stylus. Attached to the record were amendments that supposedly reclassified my lot as a border property under HOA visual compliance jurisdiction. Translation: they were trying to rope me in by inventing paperwork and sliding it into the official land register, hoping I'd never notice. I don't rattle easily, but that set my pulse hammering. I called Dale. "This is criminal." "Yep," he replied. "Forgery, false filing, and potentially wire fraud if they submitted it electronically." "We go loud?" "Oh, we go nuclear." That night, I filed a report with the sheriff's office, official complaint of document tampering and fraud. Dale drafted a motion for a temporary restraining order against any HOA personnel accessing my land or contacting me directly. Then I went into lockdown mode. Every gate sealed, cameras upgraded. I installed 2 new motion lights with long-range IR. I even put up a second sign on the gatepost that read, "Private property, no HOA access. Trespassers will be prosecuted." I knew that wouldn't stop them, but it would give me legal ammo for when they inevitably tried again. Which, of course, they did. First, they chained my front gate shut with a padlock bearing the HOA seal, just bolted it on like they owned the place. Then someone, no doubt from the same HOA clown car, dumped a contractor bag full of garbage right in my driveway. Coffee cups, HOA newsletters, empty bottles of boxed wine, and a crumpled Aspen Crest yard sign. Subtle. I reviewed the footage. Masked figure, night entry, quick toss, coward's work. Then came the phone calls. Not to me, to the local zoning office, the fire marshal, even the state wildlife department. I know because I got the visit. A plain white pickup pulled up one afternoon, and out stepped a young guy in a windbreaker holding a clipboard. "You Mark Vinton?" "Depends who's asking." He introduced himself as a field officer from the Department of Environmental Compliance. Said he was following up on a tip about suspicious activities involving firearms and potentially illegal animal enclosures. I actually laughed. "You think I'm running a dog-fighting ring in the middle of the forest?" He shrugged. "Just checking. Mind if I look around?" I didn't. I had nothing to hide. And the best part? I recorded the whole thing. He found nothing. No cages, no dogs, no underground bunkers. Just a very annoyed homeowner with a digital paper trail the size of a case file at Langley. After he left, I checked my cameras again. That same afternoon, an HOA board member, a guy named Dan, I'd seen him once at the town co-op, fake smile and teeth like tombstones, parked across from my property and spent 30 minutes pretending to take photos of pine cones with his iPad, while clearly aiming it at my windows. I didn't confront him, I just added it to the log. I was building a case, carefully, quietly, the way I used to back when my enemies didn't carry clipboards. They carried rifles. The difference now? This time, I was the one at home, and they were the intruders. The next move didn't come from a clipboard or bolt cutter. It came from the internet. I was in the middle of reviewing footage from the previous night. Someone had tried to pry open one of the camera boxes along my southern fence line when I got a text from Dale. Just a link, no message. That alone made my stomach knot. I tapped it. It led to a video on YouTube, posted the day before by a channel called Aspen Living Now. Their banner looked like it had been designed in PowerPoint by someone who owned way too many throw pillows. I hit play. The video opened with soft piano music and a slow drone shot over the community. There were shots of kids playing with bubbles, a golden retriever running through trimmed grass. Karen Drake appeared at the 30-second mark, standing in front of the HOA office in a red blazer and a smile like a shark wearing lipstick. Then the title card hit. Who is the man in the mountains? The threat behind Aspen Crest's fence line. I nearly choked on my coffee. What followed was 5 minutes of pure slander presented like a community expose. Karen narrated it herself, with that fake concerned tone PTA presidents use when explaining why your child is emotionally disruptive. They referred to me, not by name, but as a former government operative who had rejected community standards and was believed to be harboring weapons and unlicensed surveillance equipment. They showed satellite footage of my house, blurred but obvious, and cited anonymous resident concerns about bunker construction, militia affiliations, and even possible ties to sovereign citizen ideologies. It was so far off base, I would have laughed if it weren't so calculated. One part stood out. Karen on camera said, "All we want is harmony. But sometimes someone builds walls not just to keep others out, but to hide something inside." They were trying to turn me into a local boogeyman. The comments were a dumpster fire. Sounds dangerous. Why doesn't he just follow the rules like everyone else? Bet he's a prepper. Red flag. I felt the burn rise in my neck, not from shame, but from fury. This wasn't amateur hour anymore. This was character assassination, psychological warfare via clickbait. Dale called me 5 minutes later. We can hit them with a defamation suit, but that's a long road, and it'll just feed the narrative that you're a combative recluse. I don't need a lawsuit, I said. I need a damn spotlight. That night, I made my own video. No drones, no piano. Just me in front of my property marker holding up the HOA documents, the forged ones, and the county land record overlays. I explained calmly that I was a private homeowner, legally outside HOA jurisdiction, and that the people behind the video were the same ones who had tried to break into my house and falsify my legal records. Then I dropped the hammer. I included clips from my security feed, the fake inspection at 5:30 a.m., the illegal padlock on my gate, the HOA board member photographing my house under the guise of birdwatching. I even played the 911 call from the morning they tried to force entry. I ended the video with a single sentence. I've dealt with drug cartels that were more subtle. Within 24 hours, my video had twice the views of Karen's. I started getting messages, first from locals, then from people outside the state, other homeowners, people who'd had their own HOA nightmares. A few even offered to help investigate. One guy in Nevada sent me a PDF of a case where a similar HOA had been federally dissolved for fraudulent expansion tactics. I saved it. Karen's video got quietly pulled 2 days later, but the war wasn't over, not even close. Because while the internet burned, she was already working on her next move. Not with cameras, with concrete. It started with a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a literal one. I was sipping my second cup of coffee on the deck when I heard it. Applause. Polite, plastic, the kind they rehearse in corporate seminars. I stepped out with my binoculars and scanned down the hill toward the edge of my property where the old service road curved into the pine. And there she was, Karen Drake, flanked by a small gathering of suburban sycophants and one guy in khakis holding a camera. She stood next to a freshly hammered wooden sign that read, "Aspen Crest Community Legacy Park, in honor of our veterans." I almost dropped my mug. Behind them was a makeshift path leading from the HOA's property directly onto mine, or damn close. There were stakes in the ground, neon twine stretched between them, and what looked like gravel poured in a line to mark a future trail. A wooden bench had already been installed, right on the border, except it wasn't the border, it was over it. They were building a park on my land, and they were hiding behind American flags and words like legacy and community. My phone buzzed with a county notification, Public Beautification Project approved by HOA Initiative 423B. I clicked through. There it was. A permit request filed under Minor Landscape Adjustment, sponsored by Aspen Crest HOA, claiming a strip of disputed easement access for a community park. The application included a satellite image with my property line conveniently moved about 15 feet north. These people had redrawn my land, and now they were planting flowers in it. I didn't storm down there. Not yet. Instead, I called Dale. "Tell me you're seeing this," I said. "I am," he replied. "I'm already drafting a cease and desist, but it gets worse." The zoning office flagged this as an HOA-approved community benefit project, which means they're trying to force municipal recognition. If it gets enough traction, it could be grandfathered into existence. The park would become real and permanent. Jesus. By the time I hung up, they were planting a goddamn sapling 10 feet from my fence line. A kid was helping. Of course, there was a kid. A camera panned slowly across the scene like they were filming a campaign ad. That night, I checked the footage from my far side trail cam. Sure enough, the construction crew hadn't even come from the HOA side. They'd driven around from the access road, cut through a closed gate, and hauled the bench in through my backlot. Unauthorized entry. Again. I documented everything. Still photos, timestamps, GPS coordinates. Then I pulled the nuclear option. I filed for a temporary injunction in county court, citing unlawful occupation of private land, misappropriation of property for public use, and attempted fraudulent annexation under the guise of community service. And then I went public. I uploaded another video. This time, no commentary, just security footage. Aerial overlays showing the real property lines, side-by-side comparisons between the official survey and the doctored permit application. Then footage of HOA members cheerfully cutting ribbons, planting flags, and setting foot a full 20 feet onto my deeded land. I ended the video with a single sentence superimposed on a black screen. "This isn't community. This is conquest." The response was swift. Locals started asking questions. HOA members, the quieter ones, began distancing themselves. Someone anonymously emailed me a PDF, internal HOA minutes discussing strategic community expansion using legacy projects. I couldn't prove it was real, but it looked damn legit. 3 days later, a representative from the county planning office came out with 2 surveyors. I met them at the edge of the lot with a stack of maps and a GoPro running the whole time. The verdict? My land. Fully, clearly, no ambiguity. The park was ordered shut down immediately. Construction halted, bench removed, sign dismantled. The tree, still there for now. I left it. It wasn't the tree's fault. Karen, of course, didn't take it lying down. That same week, a petition started circulating in Aspen Crest titled "Preserve Our Park, Protect Our Values." The intro paragraph, "One man's paranoia shouldn't erase the hopes of a community." That's when I knew she wasn't done. She was just getting creative. I don't know what finally broke me. The fake ribbon cutting, the garbage dumping, the dog shit petitions. But something snapped. The gloves were off. I was done reacting. It was time to strike back. Not with drama, not with threats, but with paperwork. Weaponized, sharpened, and aimed straight at the heart of the beast. Money. Dale and I started digging, not just into my case, but into HOA Aspen Crest itself. He subpoenaed their financial statements, or what passed for them, through a discovery motion tied to our injunction case. Took some lawyering, some persistence, and a clerk with a grudge against HOA abuse. But after a week, we got them. I expected red tape. What I didn't expect was a full-blown circus of fiscal malpractice. The HOA books were a mess. Funds shuffled between multiple accounts. One listed as operating expenses, another as community improvement trust, and a third not reported anywhere publicly. Under the name Aspen Enrichment Initiative. It wasn't on any of their member-facing reports, but money flowed into it regularly. 5, 10, sometimes $15,000 a month. I cross-checked transactions. One caught my eye, a payment of $7,000 to a consultant with no listed company name. The memo line read, "Community Compliance Optimization." Dale ran the e-SAN. It belonged to Karen Drake herself. This wasn't just sketchy, it was fraud. But we needed more than numbers. We needed something explosive, tangible. So I reached out to an old contact, Jack Harlow, former IRS auditor turned freelance watchdog. The man had the personality of a thumb drive and the instincts of a bloodhound. I sent him everything we had. 3 days later, Jack called me at 6 in the morning. No pleasantries. They're filing tax returns as a 501. You know what that means? Nonprofit, civic league, I said. Right. Except they're also collecting voluntary HOA dues and pocketing consulting fees, funneling them into undeclared disbursements. That's private inurement. If they're using nonprofit status to enrich board members, it's felony level. He paused. You want me to report this to the IRS whistleblower unit? Yes, I said, and I want the state HOA regulatory board notified too. He chuckled. You're not playing around. No, I said. I'm done playing. We filed 2 reports, one federal, one state level, citing suspected tax fraud, conflict of interest, and false filing of exempt status. I attached a full report, annotated bank activity, scanned copies of checks, and minutes from HOA meetings where special funds were discussed with conveniently no paper trail. Then we waited. While the wheels of bureaucracy ground into motion, Karen struck again. She scheduled a community emergency town hall, conveniently held 2 days after I filed the complaints. The topic? Threats to community stability and misinformation campaigns. You know who the misinformation campaign was. I wasn't invited, of course, but someone slipped me a recording. Karen stood at the podium like a wartime mayor talking about digital attacks, defamatory content, and a single individual exploiting legal loopholes to endanger our way of life. She stopped just short of naming me, but the dog whistles were clear. Worse, she brought a guest speaker, a young attorney from Denver who spewed nonsense about border jurisdiction elasticity and community cohesion overrides. It was all gibberish, untested theories that wouldn't hold up in traffic court, but the crowd ate it up. That's when I realized something chilling. Karen wasn't just a bully with a god complex. She was a true believer, and she was convincing others to believe too. But while she rallied the sheep, the hounds were closing in. Jack emailed me late that week. IRS opened a case. Preliminary investigation pending. The state HOA regulatory board acknowledged our complaint and issued an inquiry demand to the Aspen Crest board for all financial records from the past 5 years. Karen had no idea, not yet, but she would, because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about showing everyone else that you don't get to rewrite laws and call it community spirit. And the only thing louder than her fake town halls was the sound of an audit kicking in her front door. The knock came at exactly 9:03 in the morning. Not a soft one either. Sharp, controlled, practiced. I opened the door to find a sheriff's deputy and a man in a gray suit holding a clipboard the size of a phone book. "Mr. Venton?" the suit asked. I nodded. "Sheriff's office. We have a warrant for search and seizure at the Aspen Crest HOA office and its auxiliary property. Based on documentation you and your counsel submitted." I stepped aside and smiled. "Need coffee?" He didn't. An hour later, I was parked in the lot across from the pristine faux colonial structure that served as Aspen Crest's HQ. I watched from behind tinted windows as 2 unmarked SUVs pulled up, followed by a patrol unit and a white van with the logo of the Colorado Department of Regulatory Affairs. And then I watched Karen Drake walk outside, clearly unprepared for what was about to happen. She had that same red blazer on, the uniform of tyrants hiding behind rules. For a second, I thought she might bluff her way through it. She marched down the stairs, clipboard in hand, tried to intercept the lead agent like she still ran the show. Didn't even get 3 words in before they showed her the warrant. Her face didn't fall, it cracked. They didn't cuff her. Not yet. But they entered the building with purpose. 2 deputies guarded the doors. One rolled in a dolly. 20 minutes later, they rolled it back out, stacked with document boxes, labeled folders, external hard drives, a laptop. A banker's box with petitions scrawled across the side. I couldn't hear her voice from where I sat, but I could tell she was panicking, pacing, gesturing wildly. One agent calmly took notes while another reviewed papers right in front of her, red pen in hand. Then something strange happened. A man emerged from the building holding what looked like a template kit. Blank forms already filled with generic homeowner information, not signed, but pre-filled with names, addresses, and declarations of voluntary HOA participation. I recognized the formatting. It was the same type of form they'd used to rope me in. Only now they had dozens of them, maybe hundreds. I got out of the truck and walked up to the edge of the sidewalk, stayed behind the barrier. Just watched. Karen finally saw me. She stopped talking. Her lips moved, forming words. Something between, "You son of a bitch," and, "This isn't over." I didn't say a word. Then came the moment. An officer stepped outside holding a body cam tablet, displaying footage. I didn't get to see it, but Karen did, and I saw her whole posture collapse. Shoulders slumped, arms dropped. She looked suddenly smaller. Another man, plain clothes, state badge, handed her a folder. She opened it, skimmed, closed it again. Then came the cuffs. Not tight, not dramatic, but unmistakable. Karen Drake, president of the Aspen Crest Homeowners Association, queen of fraudulent compliance, was placed under arrest. Charge list? Still forming, but I had a good guess. Falsifying public documents, mail fraud, tax evasion, unauthorized access, harassment, criminal conspiracy. A deputy turned to the press van that had pulled up. Someone had tipped off the local news and gave a quick official statement. Ongoing investigation into HOA misconduct. No further comments at this time. I drove home in silence, letting it settle in. Later that day, Dale called. They also found a video, he said. Oh, one of the compliance officers, the guy who called 911 on you, was caught in a recorded training session. Karen instructing staff to assert entry confidently, even without legal authority. Said homeowners would usually cave if you cite visual cohesion doctrine. I whistled. Jesus. Want the cherry on top? Dale asked. Hit me. She tried to transfer money out of the slush fund this morning. IRS flagged it in real time. That's when the federal case activated. They're rolling this up to a grand jury. Karen wasn't the only one going down. 2 board members had already turned. One claimed they were just following her lead. Another said he didn't even know the documents were fake. He thought it was standard HOA stuff. Cowards. Every one of them. But it didn't matter, because the house of cards had collapsed. And I hadn't just pulled one. I'd lit the damn deck on fire. It took nearly 6 months for the dust to settle. Longer than I expected, shorter than Karen deserved. The trial started in federal court in Denver, with Karen Drake front and center in a navy suit that looked 2 sizes too big, and a face that looked 5 years older. The charges stuck. Every single one. Fraud, forgery, harassment, wire fraud, and misuse of nonprofit funds. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a 13-year sentence in federal prison, no parole for the first 7. 2 of her board members got 6 apiece for conspiracy and accessory to fraud. The so-called compliance inspectors pled out early and got probation with conditions, including mandatory community service and a permanent ban from holding positions in any HOA. Ever. The Aspen Crest HOA didn't survive. The state stepped in with a formal dissolution order. Turns out Karen had been operating without valid board elections for almost 3 years, using intimidation to block anyone from running against her. When the membership learned the truth, the last board resigned en masse. Aspen Crest, as an HOA, was no more. The residents would have to manage their affairs through a newly formed neighborhood council, one that operated under state supervision with transparency laws enforced by the same regulators who once ignored them. They sent me a letter of apology. I burned it. What I didn't burn was the check. $730,000 in damages, pain and suffering, legal reimbursement, and 1 extra line item, privacy breach and unauthorized property use. I used the money to upgrade the property again. Reinforced perimeter fencing, new surveillance nodes, drone alerts, and I bought the adjacent 5 acres just to make sure no one could ever expand again. The first thing I did was put up a new gate sign, steel engraved, private property, no HOA. Trespassers will be sued into oblivion. I kept it classy. There were some unexpected ripple effects too. A local journalist picked up the story and ran it as an expose. The HOA that went too far. It went viral. Then a national podcast featured it in a 5-part series. I had to decline interviews more times than I can count. They wanted the ex-Fed versus the HOA Queen narrative. I gave them silence. Other homeowners reached out, dozens, from Colorado, from Nevada, even as far as Florida. People who'd been forced into HOA arrangements, scammed, lied to, threatened, some with worse stories than mine, some who had lost homes, families, reputations. I gave them copies of every document I could legally share. You'd be surprised how much you can teach someone with a 3-page affidavit and a red pen. One guy in Texas told me my case helped him get his own fake deed voided. Another woman in Arizona used my filings to push her case through state court, and won. I never intended to start a movement, but the fire spreads on its own. As for me, I wake up early, but not because someone's pounding at my door. It's the birds now, or sometimes just the wind cutting through the pines. I still walk the perimeter once a day. Habit, muscle memory. But these days, it's just peace, not surveillance. Sometimes I stop at that little tree they planted, the one from the fake legacy park. I left it there, grew into something decent despite the bullshit that brought it here. I figure it's a reminder. You plant lies long enough, they'll get ripped out by the root. But sometimes, just sometimes, you plant a fight in the right soil, and the truth grows taller than they ever expected.